So, Travis, I guess I'm a psychiatrist, and I contribute occasionally to Rebel. And I haven't heard of your organisation before, but it's certainly made a splash more recently. Maybe start with just tell us a little bit about you specifically.
Well, I formed this company, Penguin Philosophy, based on my own beliefs about the way the world should be, and the foundational aspects of that is just letting art and science be your fundamental inspirations in life, and then you build from there. And I think there are many ways that we can inspire the world with art and science. And I think one of the ways is what we've been doing with these large scale, live, long form discussions about art and science. And some of them we go more down the science realm. But I think this is an amazing time to be alive. And it's becoming popular to think, and I've been saying this a lot lately, and that's only going to be just amazing for our planet, in the sense that once politicians start seeing that, they should start be building platforms around science, reason, and this popularity of thinking, then I think we're going to see much more progressive policies coming out of the front end of things.
What's your intellectual and sort of occupational background, Travis?
My intellectual background is basically I've always been a thinker, and I spent most of my time thinking about performance and art when I was young. So I was an actor and training to be a performer up until I was about 23, 24. And then at the same time, I was still, I was taking master's philosophy courses and different things that kept my teeth wet in philosophy and science. But I only did some formal training in science and philosophy, but nothing of any notoriety. So I'm kind of I'm also a pianist, and I'm a self-taught pianist. So I guess maybe that's the best way to describe me when it comes to philosophy and science.
Okay. Now, I guess I've certainly noticed your organisation from having some big name contrarian sort of thinkers. I guess tell me your attraction to thinkers like, say, Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson and the like.
Well, I think the world needs people who are brave enough to discuss competing views in kind of the form that I am presenting them in. Live on stage, you can't take back a mistake that you've made when you're live in front of an audience. It's just, and some people's brands just don't allow for it. It's like Sam Harris's brand, his audience, they will not accept if he doesn't think carefully and deliver something carefully. Whereas the Jordan Peterson brand, it's like he can kind of ramble like Trump. I mean, Trump's a horrible. Yeah, not to say that Jordan's like Trump, but that sense of, okay, let's spitball here and see where this conversation goes, and I'm gonna throw in some things here and see what you all think, even though it might be crazy. But so I think finding heroes and finding people brave enough to get up on stage and who are great thinkers. I mean, being a great thinker is one of the main assets I look for when I'm thinking of who I want to put on stage together. People who can reason on the fly. People who have some competing ideologies that there's millions of people on that believe in each of their ideologies. So putting them together on stage, letting them go to battle with their ideas, I think is important. So you got to find people like Sam, like Jordan, like Eric Weinstein, who are able to do this live on the fly. And I don't think there are many of them that are as exciting as people like Jordan and Sam.
I mean, there's obviously a big demand for it. And what do you make that your events are almost like rock concerts, and I noticed one of the pieces in Britain argued asked the question: are some of the public intellectuals the new rock stars? Tell me a bit about what you think the attraction is. Why are people so drawn to this now?
Well, I think, like I said, I think it's becoming popular to think, and I think that's been pretty recent. And it seems like when something big happens in the United States, it tends to trickle out and affect the whole world. And something as big as someone like Donald Trump being elected into office, I think to a certain degree, a lot of people said, okay, enough is enough. We need to really start making sure everyone knows that thinking is popular, because we have someone in the office in the US right now that is a lack of thought, has a lack of thinking. And I think what we're seeing in these armies that are coming out into these big arenas is that these are people, I really think these are mostly centrist thinkers. They're not on the left, on the right. I think if you were actually to boil down to who they are, they might identify with some of the ideologies more on either side. But I think in the end, they're judging each statement on the statement and each idea on the idea. And I mean, to me, this is centrist thinking. And you sit on the center, and it doesn't matter what someone's affiliation is. What they're saying is either bullshit or not. So I think,
Is it harder to be on the centre these days, Travis? In terms of what gets promoted, etc.
I think it's whenever you are trying to ride a line that isn't really popular, it can be difficult. I don't think it's a popular thing to be a centrist and not to affiliate with a certain party in the United States. And I think what we're seeing, though, is armies of people coming out and saying, we don't care what's currently popular. We think we want thinking to be popular, and we want the people running for office to understand that there is a large delegation of people here that value higher levels of thinking as opposed to just going with the idea that's going to get you the most votes. And hopefully this catches on, and when it comes to politics, that one day we're evaluating the people that we can be voting for based on what's coming out of their mouth, not their party affiliation.
And what are the differences you notice? I mean, you're from Canada, is that right?
Yes.
What do you notice the differences, I guess, in the Anglosphere, be it the United States to Canada, and you've been through Britain as well? Tell me a bit of the differences you've noticed, and you're coming to Australia soon.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to notice a lot of cultural differences, but I think everyone's struggling with the same problems everywhere. It's this problem of, politics getting in the way of reason. And this happens all the time. It happened. And also this idea of PC culture, this extreme left idea of political correctness, to the sense that you can't even talk about certain ideas. And if you do, you're going to get thrown over the border and told to get the hell out. So I think that the way freedom of speech is being challenged in some countries, and this idea of safe spaces and all this stuff, I don't think there's any use for it. And I think it's a global issue. It's not just in certain countries. I see, I was sitting at dinner with some really close friends of mine the other night, and some people, naturally, when they get together with me, they want to start talking about philosophical things. And so I engaged, and basically when I was asked an opinion on something, and I related it to, a race issue or an issue in feminism. And I was told, because I appear to be white skinned and I appear to be male, that I wasn't allowed to have an opinion on it, even though I have quite a learned opinion on some of these issues. So these are sexisms and racisms that we need
So
to.
the chance that you're not white or male, is that correct? If you
Well,
if you feel that you're not.
well, the thing, yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like, if you want to set up these social rules, they have to apply also to the apparent white male. It's like, I and but it was really interesting to me that that this is becoming popularized, and I tend to hang out with people that would probably identify more on the left, and
So have you received some blowback then for some of your work?
sure.
Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, the most extreme aspect of this is the amount of death threats I receive. I mean,
Death threats. Okay.
Death threats. So I started this company, wanting to promote science, reason, art, evidence, and things that we should value. And about once we were 1 year established was probably when I got my first death threat, and this was after working with Richard Dawkins and a couple other people that are heavy on the atheistic side of things, and on the science and reason side. And this, unfortunately, in this day and age, this upsets people enough to want to issue me a death threat. But since Dublin and London, like, my death threat toll has increased by 4 times. I was receiving a death threat, like, once or every 2 weeks, where someone would send something on social media like, "You're gonna die, Pangburn. I'm gonna have your head, Pangburn." And I'm just like, okay, this is just some.
And what's the nature of it? Like, what are they angry about?
Well, it's hard to say. Like, I don't have enough evidence to really tell what, but I can, just by the nature of some of these threats, threatening to behead me, cut my head off. These are.
So there might be sort of anti, like, you think it might be from a Islamic type sphere, or?
Yeah. Okay. So I think some of it stems from that, and I've done a few podcasts where I've spoken ill of Muhammad and some of the doctrines in Islam.
Well, that'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that'll do it. And some of and obviously some of the speakers I've worked with have spoken a lot of ill about on those subjects. So, but it's not, that's not to say that all these threats are coming from a seemingly Muslim person. They very well could not all be that, or any of that. It's like someone doesn't say, "I'm a Muslim and I want to chop your head off." It's more like, "Hey, here's an old bio of you when you were an actor from online. I see where your hometown is. I see where you've been, and you hang out in these areas. So I'm going to be looking for you," type thing. So yeah.
Okay. Is that upsetting for you, or you can brush it off?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I hate about this whole thing, like, for me personally, I chose to enter this arena and to fight this, war of ideas. But my family and my extended family didn't choose this. So, I mean, it really hurts when anything's directed towards them, or, and I do anything I can to protect them. But it's, some people, the way they grow up in the towns that they grow up in, it's like there's no worries of security and things like this, and then all of a sudden it's like then one person of the family decides he's going to wage this war of ideas on the world and travel the world and do these live speaking events and attract all this attention to himself, and then a lot of the people who lose out or need to change their lifestyle a little bit are the ones that had nothing really to do with it.
I guess it was from seeing your speakers and speakers like, as you say, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, Majid Nawaz, and Eric Weinstein. They're all coming to Australia soon as well, and I know they've been through other parts of Canada, America, Britain. You've had a particularly strong reaction in Britain, I've noticed. I mean, I guess from their talks and especially their interaction, what are some of the observations in terms of what they see as the West's biggest challenges at the moment?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear. The most common fear, I would say, is when we start seeing vandalism, destruction, and I guess all around unreasonable behavior from this kind of newly formed extreme leftist ideology.
Okay.
And it's like, and it's something that is pointed out often because there are many apologists for groups like Antifa, you know, these groups that are going around and vandalizing people's property who they don't agree with, or they're showing up with air horns, or they're vandalizing you know, places where these speakers are speaking, or they're even going after the speakers themselves. It's like and there's a lot of apologists on the left that are okay with the actions of what these people are doing. So it's easy to point at the extreme right and say, okay, let's look at the Nazis and and the white supremacists. It's like, okay, we all know those guys are assholes. It's like, we all know
it's
that.
It's not a hard debate, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a difficult debate. But what is a difficult debate for some people is that this idea of deplatforming, where, you know, you'll have a speaker going to a university to talk about ideas, and it's the reaction is the antithesis of what I think to be the most constructive reaction. From my sense, you put the bad ideas and the good ideas, all ideas, on a stage.
I'm Tanvir Ahmed. If you like this video, subscribe to Rebel Media.